Iri Divincenzo was born and grew up in a small town in the north of Italy. From a young age, she has been volunteering in shelters and rescuing animals. Iri moved to Milan for college, where she graduated in fashion design from the Polytechnic in Milan. She moved to the US in 2012, where she started volunteering at the Burbank Animal Shelter a few years after, and that's when her passion for animal welfare really began. She quit her job as a production manager in the fashion industry to work for a small animal rescue. Iri knew that she wanted to have a bigger impact, so when she was offered a job at Pasadena Humane, she was happy to accept it. Iri is currently the adoptions manager at Pasadena Humane in Southern California. Hi, Iri. Welcome to the Conscious Cup.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. And who do you have with you?
This is Mel. This is one of my foster kittens, and he just really wanted to be part of this.
I love it. Hi, Mel. Oh, I love it. He's so cute. So, thank you for joining me on this. I'm really excited to just jump into the work that you do. For those of you who don't know, I've known Iri for a couple of years now, and we've gotten to know each other, and I've just seen her passion, especially following you on Instagram. I've just seen you always posting, always spreading the word about animals in need of help. So, yeah, I'm really excited to just jump into it. So, I would love for you to start and tell us a little bit about what you do at Pasadena Humane.
I am the adoption manager at Pasadena Humane. So I'm basically the last to see the animals leaving the shelters. Pasadena Humane has a lot of programs, and adoption is just one of them. And that is my department. That's where I come in and I bring my expertise.
I love that. How did you decide to get into this? I mean, I know you've always loved animals, but I would love for you to kind of share about you were in fashion before and how did you make this switch?
Yeah, so I have actually been in rescue basically my whole life. I remember the first time I rescued my first dog was I was in high school or middle school. I was in middle school. So I was probably 12 or 13 and I was walking to school. I probably had to walk about a mile to go to my school and I saw a dog being run over by a car and I followed the dog. And at that time, I didn't have a phone, so I had to knock on someone's door, and we called animal control. I was living in Italy at that time, and we called animal control, and the dog was rescued and then adopted out. So that was my first time that I did rescue on my own. But I have been rescuing animals and volunteering in animal shelters since I was basically a child. I come from a totally different background. I graduated at the Polytechnic of Milan in fashion design, and that was my career. But my passion was always animal welfare. Like I said, I volunteer in a lot of animal shelters. And a few years ago, in 2017, I started to volunteer at a city animal shelter where I did a lot of different things, mostly adoptions. And at that point, it was just a volunteer job, but I quickly realized that there was a lot more than just volunteering for me. It was truly my true passion, and I left the fashion industry and I made animal welfare a career.
So it's been a part of your life for a long time. It's
Definitely.
amazing. It's amazing. I was wondering if you could share maybe a few experiences from, your early years helping with rescues and then like also on the adoption side. Like, are there any sort of animals that really stick in your mind? I mean, I'm sure all of them that you get to meet are amazing.
Oh, yes. I obviously, when you work in animal welfare, it's hard not to get attached to specific animals. I actually, my first cat that I adopted was a kitty that he was already older when I was volunteering in Burbank Animal Shelter. I was a volunteer there, and I was doing socialization with all the kitties that they had there. And George, my cat, at that time he was a resident at Burbank Animal Shelter. He was returned to the shelter a few times because of some medical issues that he was experiencing. And I just fell in love with him. I was there for only a few months as a volunteer, but I truly fell in love with him, and he's still with me now. He's a senior. He has diabetes. He has some issues, but this is to say, even the ones that get overlooked, they can be amazing pets that they can give so much love. And especially right now at Pasadena Humane, we work with a lot of owner surrenders, animals that come from very heartbreaking situations. So it's really hard not to get attached to some animals. Actually, my favorite dog that was at Humane's, Pasadena Humane, just got adopted yesterday. He's a Miss Fun guy, and he got adopted yesterday. So I was really excited to make that happen.
That's such a good story. That must feel so good after you've like journeyed with him through so much.
Yeah, he was there for a few months. He was really an amazing dog. Sometimes dogs do get a little bit overlooked for a variety of reasons. Not sure why he was overlooked, because he was an actually really, really good dog, but finally he found his home.
I love that. I was going to ask you because it sounds like really heavy work. It's like animal social work is what I liken it to. So, how do you take care of yourselves? You know, all the people who work there, like, what do you do for yourself so that you can, show up well for the animals?
That's a really good question, and it is definitely a very draining, very hard work that we do in animal welfare. I think the most important thing is, and this is something that I tell myself every day, the most important thing when you do this type of work is that you look at the big picture. There are going to be times where it is hard, it is heartbreaking, you are disappointed by some situations, some outcomes. But the most important thing is that you keep in mind the big picture and why you're working in animal welfare is really to make a change. Yes, of course, it is about the life of the animals, but also is to make a change in the community as well. And that's something that Pasadena Humane is one of the mission of Pasadena Humane, to really make a difference in the community. We don't only do adoptions, we don't only do fosters, but we really, really try to help the community from surrendering even their pets to us. So we have a program called Helping Paws, where adopters or owners that are struggling can get medical or vet help, food, supplies, uh, and we really try really hard to make sure that the community feels supported by Pasadena Humane, not only through adoption and foster, but really like keep their pets in their home, if there are ways for us to help them with that.
Sounds like you guys do a lot more than, just provide kind of like the shelter piece, or the rescue piece. And I think, what are some common misconceptions that you think that, the public has or people in the community have about animal rights?
For example, Pasadena Humane, a lot of the members of the community thinks that we are a no-kill shelter.
Mm.
There isn't really such a thing of no-kill. We are a low-kill and we are a conscious shelter. So we are also an open admission shelter. So every animal that come through our doors, we will accept, no matter the medical condition, no matter the age, no matter really anything. We accept any animals that come through our door. So because of that, it's really hard to consider ourselves really no kill. By the standards, we are no kill, but we consider ourselves more low kill, and that just means that when the quality of life of the animal is affected, if there are some really serious behavioral issues or medical issues, then that's when the animal we help them get a better outcome. So that is one of the misconception about what we do. And I think it's really important to talk about this, because it's, at the end of the day, we are trying to make the best choice for every animal. We treat every animal that comes through our door as an individual, and we make the best decision for that individual itself.
Because everything I know about animal shelters, at least here, I feel like I just hear they're overcrowded and, we just need people to adopt. And like, I don't know much else beyond that. Like you said, I feel like I just assume like most shelters have like, are kill shelters. And like, I just saw the movie Strays, and I don't know if you've seen that movie, but it was hilarious. But yeah, there's like a scene, from the shelter, and they all like kind of look for when the guard comes, opens the door so they can all just escape. And so I think a lot of people have like more of a negative view of shelters and don't know like what they do, or I guess what the good ones are. So yeah, maybe we can put in link in our show notes later some resources that people can have, to educate themselves a little bit more, because I think there's a lot of people that want to help, they just don't really know how. So yeah.
Yeah, and there is also a big difference between rescues and shelters. Rescues per se are considered no kill because they can accept, and I come from a rescue background. Before I started to work at Pasadena Humane, I worked for a rescue. Very different, because rescues can say, I have space, I can take this animal in. Shelters, they don't have that luxury. We have to accept every animal that comes through our door. And when I say any animal, I mean any animal. We had, at some point, we have an alligator. Not sure where
Oh
it's
wow.
from. Right now we have a rooster. Uh,
Oh
so
wow. If people
and,
come and drop them off, they're like, "Oh, I have an alligator out back." Like
literally, yeah. When I
that's
was at
crazy.
Burbank Animal Shelter, someone dropped off a bobcat, and we can't say
Oh.
no. We have to accept, because we are, as a shelter, we are, as an open admission shelter, we have to accept any animal that come through our doors. Yeah,
Wow, had no clue about the difference between the two. I always thought that they were the same thing, or that they were all one. So that's a great
yeah.
distinction. But how do you handle like an alligator or a bobcat, like ones that you have no like sort of training for, that you've never dealt with? Like because you can't just put them with the other dogs, I assume, with cats or
No, it
you
does
know.
not work like that. But at Pasadena Humane, we are very lucky, because we do have the opportunity to have different departments. At
Mhm.
Pasadena Humane, we also have a wildlife rehab department. So we have, most of the time, we have possums, raccoons, birds, squirrels that came either as like really tiny babies that really cannot survive on their own, or injured, and we rehabilitate them until they're able to go back to their environment. And it's a different department, where really only the technicians are allowed, because it's a very, of course, like everybody, want to go and spend time with the possum, but really the most important thing is that we keep them wild. Some animals are supposed to be wild. We have to keep them wild. So we
It's
have
not
the
a zoo
wildlife.
and a petting zoo.
It's not a zoo. Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. We
Yeah.
want to keep them wild, and our wildlife department work really hard to rehabilitate them so that they can survive in the wild like they are supposed to.
So, yeah, I guess my next question for you is, since we were talking about rescues versus shelters, and also just working with wild animals, trying to keep them wild and the rehabilitation process and all of preserving that. This is kind of a random question, but what is your personal thoughts on zoos? And should people go to them, aquariums, or do you think there are just certain good places and not so good places to go?
I think there are two different ways of seeing this. When I was younger, I used to be one of the, animal rights outside of the aquarium, trying to
Mhm.
turn away people from going to aquariums. I think that throughout the years of working in animal welfare and being just really involved in animal welfare, I have changed my mindset about how to approach some very difficult topics, just like zoos and aquarium, because I do understand, when I was a child, my parents took me to the aquarium. I really enjoyed it. It was great. Growing up, I understood what some of the issues with aquariums and zoos they can be. I think that my approach to that is education, just like I approach anything that is animal welfare related. I think the most important thing is to educate families and people on why aquariums and zoos are not the best educational opportunities for our children. There are some aquariums and zoos that take in animals that are rescues, so animals that cannot be rehabilitated or reintroduced to the wild, and they end up in basically they're rescue zoos and rescues aquarium. And I really encourage families to do some research in your area and find where these places are, rather than going to a zoo that just take the animals out of their
Like
home,
natural
basically
habitat.
their
Yeah.
natural
Yeah.
habitat.
Yeah.
And places that have rescues, wild animals exist, and they're really important for conservation. So I do suggest to look into those places rather than just petting zoos and aquarium
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. I don't know if you've heard about there was a whole well after Tiger King, and that whole Netflix series came out, but those sort
Yeah.
of what do they call it? Like rare wild animals, tigers and lions and that kind of thing in these roadside attractions in like I think North or South Carolina. And I'm just like, I mean, I get if they can't be reintroduced to the wild, but I also feel like it's very exploitive for the animal, to have people just coming in, day out, like posing for photos, making them do tricks, petting them. So, yeah, that's really, I don't know, it's something that makes me like really sad. So I can only imagine, you've been involved in this work for such a long time that just kind of is like, it must be very tiring to like fight against, things like that are happening in this world too.
It is, and as I was mentioning, the most important thing for me, at least, is that we educate.
Hmm.
We educate on why these places are not the best choice.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think seeing just, I understand the importance of having our next generations learning about the wild animals. I understand that, but there are so many different ways that we can make that happen rather than just taking a picture with a very stressed, very unhappy tiger or wild animal at a zoo.
How do you think people, just the average person could start getting involved in this work, and, how can they make a meaningful difference, I guess, in animal welfare, in your opinion?
I hear a lot from I hear it a lot from
Mel's giving you kisses.
yeah, Melly is like grooming me right now. Um, I hear it a lot from like people always ask me like, how did you end up being an adoption manager? How did you end up in animal welfare? Really, it was very organic for me. It happened very naturally for me because I always knew that this was a passion of mine and this was something that was really, really important and a huge part of my life. When I was younger, I decided that I wanted a career in the fashion industry. I followed that dream for a while. And then I realized that no matter what I was doing in the fashion industry, it was something that was not completely fulfilling for me. So I took a leap of faith and I completely changed my career, left the fashion industry, took a huge pay cut, but I've never been so happy. I think that if this is the path that you want to take for your life, I think it's really important to just follow your gut and really make that change. For me, I think it was really important for me to start as a volunteer because you can have an idea of what you want to do in your life, but it may be hard to make a concrete, really concrete plan when you haven't really experienced all the downside of the animal welfare. It can be really draining, it can be really hard. You need to really make sure that you take care of your mental health. You really need to make sure that you take care of yourself, your family. And it is really important that you try to not work all the time. And that's something that I tell myself all the time, because it can become really, really easy to just dedicate your whole life to animal welfare, because I think everybody that works in animal welfare, it's realize the importance of us, of our work. But you can do only so much, and you can't save all of them on your own, and you can't help others if you're not in a good mental state, a good physical state. So really is important to really start volunteer, see if that's something that you can really manage on a day-to-day situation, and really continue to take care of yourself as much as you take care of the animal that you care for.
That's so important too, because I think sometimes as humans we get fired up about something, something. I know for me, when I first became passionate about fighting human trafficking, I was just like, burn everything to the ground, let's go, and I just like started volunteering, watching every, like, just fully immersing myself, which I think is important. But now, years later, I feel like I've learned a balance where it's like, okay, it's very easy, especially in that field too. It's very similar to where, everyone in the anti-trafficking world is like, we all this common goal, like this common good to help other human beings get free and to heal. But like at the same time, you can't do that if you're also not working on your own healing and like taking care of yourself. So I think it's really important. That's great advice for anyone who wants to kind of get into this field, and also volunteering too. Like I did that. I volunteered for many of things, but especially in the field that I'm particularly passionate about, I think it's always important to not go into something assuming what a community needs, but rather like listening first and like having that approach to where like asking them like, well, anywhere, like put me anywhere, where can I help, the most, where can I be the most effective, and like kind of sitting at the feet metaphorically of the leaders in that space and asking good questions and just like being willing to serve, I guess, first, and then I think that kind of bleeds into the rest of kind of, whatever someone's journey is, and what they're passionate about. So that's really cool, that I think really inspiring that just kind of went back to what you really loved. And I think a lot of people they don't know what they want to do. And so it's like you have to try different things, and you don't have this like whole roadmap. I mean, some people do, but I don't get those people that have like that roadmap for your life, and you
Yeah.
have to try different things, and you don't know until you're fully in it and you see the good and the bad, whether or not that's something you can really, like fully take on. So I think that's a
But
really great sort of
that's
well-rounded
exactly
approach.
that's exactly how I see it. I think that a lot of people that work in animal welfare, they want the best for the animals, of course, and we kind of forget about
Mm-hmm.
us as taking care of ourselves, and that is really important too. And I think that most of us, for example, at Pasadena Humane, I have amazing coworkers. I have an amazing manager that we really support each other, and that is really really important to really work as a team and see the big picture, because everybody's going to have disappointment. It's going to be hard some days, but if you look at the big picture and you really have a support system at where you work, it makes it much much easier.
No one gets anywhere alone. So I think it's like that's always good to remember, is that look for the people that have that same goal in mind and also have that sort of team and collaborative approach.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. I love that. Is there anything, I guess, that you would recommend for people that want to educate themselves more in this space? Is there somewhere, I guess, the first step that's easy for them to go to that they can just Google, or is there like a movie or a book that you really think would be helpful for people?
I think really the most important thing is to take a look at your local shelter, walk around, ask questions, see how things works at your local shelter, get involved. There are so many volunteer opportunities to help your local shelter, and that is really the first step if you want to help your community. There are definitely a lot of resources out there, like the ASPCA website. Our website, Pasadena Humane, has a lot of resources on animal welfare. For example, I just wanted to touch on something really important that we do at Pasadena Humane. We have a community cat program. We, especially in Southern California, we have a huge population of stray and feral cats, and Pasadena Humane helps neighborhoods to get their stray cats to get spay neutered, vaccinated, so that we are not part of the problem. We
Yeah.
try to keep the population low. They have the same rights. Feral and stray cats, they have the same rights to live and thrive as pets. Animals
Yeah.
that become pets, they do. And we have a really big program of TNR. TNR is trap, neuter, return. So basically, we go and help stray cats to get spay neutered, vaccinated, and then return them where their home is. That is their home.
I
And we
love that.
return them, and they live, they don't have more babies. They're not part of this huge population of cats that live on the
Yeah.
streets anymore.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't, it's very easy to, I think, when you have a pet, to claim it as your own, but not see them as their own being. that has individual rights, because when you're a pet owner, it's like, yeah, you do have responsibilities like a child, right? Like you want to keep them alive, keep them functioning, healthy, clean, all of that. But at
Yeah.
the same time, it's almost like you have to have patience, I feel like, and take the time to kind of observe and kind of feel out, okay, what does this animal need? So I think, and
And
also just seeing too that, like you said, that's amazing that you guys do that, especially here in SoCal, but that you see it as like, okay, that's their environment, that's their home. You're not trying to like trap them and throw them into this like random environment, that'll make them
right.
more stressed out. And so that's really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I thank you so much for just sharing so much about what you're doing at Pasadena Humane. And I always kind of like to end, it's a kind of a general question, but I would love to know what inspires you most.
For me, the most important thing is that I follow what my real ideal of the world is.
Mm,
For me, I see humans as a species that is supposed to help this planet to thrive. And I lead by that idea. That is really the reason why I work in animal welfare, because I really just want to make it better for every living being on this planet. And that's really what inspire me. I working in this industry, like I said, there are a lot of times that you get disappointed, but every little victory inspire me to, make it better, think outside of the box, and really just try to make the animal welfare a more well-oiled um, operation.
If people want to find out more about Pasadena Humane and if they want to connect with you and ask you questions, where can they go?
We have a website, is pasadenahumane.org. We have a lot of resources for low cost spay neuter, or low cost vet visits. We have our programs called Helping Paws that help the community with food and vet care. We also, like I said, we have the Trap Neuter Return, so the community cat program where we help community cats. Of course, we do adoptions. Another really important thing we do is foster. We have a foster program for neonates, kittens, puppies, and so those resources are found on our website, pasadenahumane.org.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the Conscious Cup, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me.